We flip the finger to the King of England. Stole our country from the Indians. With God on our side and guns in our hand, took it for our own. Built a nation dedicated to liberty, justice and equality. It doesn't look that way to you, it doesn't look that way to me. Take this joke, I know. Listen up, man, I'll tell you who I am. Just another stupid American. You don't wanna listen, you don't wanna.
The next session of the Working Class Congress is now in session. I am here with Johnny and Esworthy, and I am Mike as usual. And how you doing, guys?
All
right. So we had the vice presidential debate this week, and I want to get you guys' reactions on it before I start talking about it. So I'll go with Johnny first.
I mean, it was definitely interesting. It was a lot more lively than the presidential debate was, but I'd have to say that even though he did it with not so much grace, I'd have to say I felt like Biden kind of won it. But
I'm sorry, everything you said is a lie. I'm sorry, everything you said is a lie.
You needed to laugh.
I'm sorry,
you did that.
everything you said is a lie. That's what I got out of the debate.
Well, it's the same thing that happened with the Romney-Obama debate. It was essentially the same thing. Every time Romney would say something, Obama would go, no, that's not the case. And
well, at this point, watching the Ryan-Biden debate, I kind of got the impression that there were two monkeys on screen throwing shit at each other. That's kind of what I got out of it.
I felt like I was sitting at a dinner table with my grandfather and some stick in the mud, and watching my grandfather just completely berate the guy. But
listen here, Sonny.
Right. I mean, but Biden, even though Biden kind of was like, he was digging in his ass, and I mean, he may not have came off completely refined, or presidential, but really he isn't. So, and if you've heard any of the other comments Biden's made, it kind of fit his persona. He's kind of got that drunk uncle kind of.
He's kind of old enough to be past the "I don't give a shit anymore" stage, so I don't really blame him.
Let's put him in the position of power. He doesn't give a shit. He's kind of rude, and he's president of the Senate.
Well, the only thing I can say about him is that he kind of feels like one of those people that's like, fuck you, I don't give a shit what you think of me. I'm going to tell you what I feel.
As a politician, you can't have that attitude.
Well, that's because of the political science aspect of it, but if I was a politician, that's exactly how I would be. So, I mean...
And let's be honest, if Bush gave a shit, he wouldn't have done 3/4 of the things he did.
Well, that's true. Or,
I don't know. Biden just struck me as like, if I were to be a politician, it would be that kind of like, man, fuck you, I'm going to say what I say, and, I made a gaffe, well, I don't give a shit. So,
It's like, I have to agree with you in some respect. I'd probably be like that too. But I would at least let the other guy finish talking before I, interrupt him. And I felt the same way about Romney, about how he would kind of grab. Basically, it's attention grabbing is what it is.
Right.
And they're trained to do that by their political science, public and speech coaches, debate coaches. Like, you have to seize the initiative and get in his face and beat him with an axe. And it's like, yeah,
that's pretty much, yeah. I mean, and I think that's why Biden came out doing it, is because Romney did it to Obama. I don't know if he necessarily, I mean, of course, I don't have a way to look at an alternative future, but I don't think if Romney had done it to Obama, because everybody was saying that, Biden was going to come out swinging on this one because of what happened in the presidential one.
Right.
So.
Well, everybody was complaining about Biden being rude, but I really don't see that much of a difference between Biden laughing and Romney's like shitting grin that he constantly has every time he thinks he knows what the fuck he's talking about.
Well, Biden interrupted Ryan 82 times during the course of the interview, the debate. That's a lot.
Well, if he knows he's wrong, why should he continue to let him to talk?
Right, that's true. I mean, and you think about it, this is the thing that gives me about the presidential debate, is the fact that the president's involved in a situation. So when you're talking about something like one of the things they were trying to talk about was the fact that Ryan was trying to say, oh, well, we shunned Israel at the UN and just so we could go talk on The View, right? And Biden's like, no. He's like, we had other commitments. I was on a conference call with Netanyahu and the president, and we were talking via conference call
That's still
for like an hour. And it's like, Ryan was trying to paint this one image, and Biden's like, no, that's not the case. We're not shunning our allies. We had other commitments. We were taking care of them. And we were still handling on our business with our foreign policy, and that's what they're trying to do to this guy. Like they're trying to say how weak he is. And they were talking about Libya, and they're trying to say how weak, the president has made us do this. I'm like, dude, he killed all these people. He's been bombed,
Personally?
What?
Personally?
Yeah, personally. He's just strangling old people.
I thought that was Clinton.
He's just strangling old people in the basement of the White House.
And Ted Kennedy.
Well, yeah, he wasn't president. What I about the debate, you enter these two people who are professional politicians and supposedly people already in positions of power. They enter into an environment that has a strict set of rules as opposed to how they're supposed to comport themselves within the structure of the debate. Yet at every turn, they just basically throw the rules to the side and say, no, I want to talk now. And that kind of sends the message to me. It says, okay, well, these people obviously think that the rules that are in place aren't for their convenience, and they're willing to just push them to the side whenever it's convenient for them to do so in order to get their way. And it seems to me like the government as a whole, as a collective aggregate entity, has been doing that for the past 10 years, if not longer, just pushing the rules aside when it slightly inconveniences their goals.
Right. And I don't disagree with you at all in that scenario. And these are even more arbitrary rules than they're used to dealing with, so it's even more of I don't give a shit what you have to say. I'm going to do what I got to do.
Yeah, but to me, the way they comport themselves that way, it's unprofessional. It's not. I remember debate in high school, and you were dismissed if you did that kind of stuff. They just said, okay, you're done. Bye.
Well, they also used to use points and everything to actually, to score you, to tell who won, not just by the popularity of how well you did your showmanship up on stage.
Right.
They also worried about your, I think they actually had fact checkers on set, or even, I'm talking about professional, like even, other presidential debates where they were trying to keep some factual things in there.
Right.
Now it's been, all that's been shunned, man. It's all about the show. It's not about the substance anymore. It's all about the style.
That's politics and government in general now. It's all about the show. It's all about being seen doing something. Yeah,
like Mitt Romney going to the hardware store and they couldn't tell the reporters what it was that he got.
What'd he get?
Nobody knows still. He couldn't. They asked him when he was walking out of the place, and he's like, yeah, just some stuff to work on the house. Well, what did you get? I gotta go. Okay.
The Japanese spin fuck chair?
Right. He couldn't just say, hey, I came and got a can of paint or a paintbrush or a hammer and some nails, because I have to fix this, creaky stairway or something. I mean,
that'd be showing weakness of some kind.
Well, see, I wouldn't think so. A man who knows how to work with his hands, I think, is a very smart man, because if you could actually physically get in there and do something, rather than just standing over somebody and barking orders for them to do it, it says a lot about your character.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'd rather vote for somebody who actually does things with his hands and her hands.
See, that's why you should stay with Obama, because he kills old people in the basement with his own bare hands.
Right? Yeah, he killed Osama bin Laden. He was there.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. He took a ball-peen hammer to him, man. That was crazy. But.
So I thought they walked in on Osama bin Laden. He was already dead from erotic asphyxiation. He was shot. Yeah, we got him.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But the kind of turn the light on this is it's just we're talking about the debates and everything like that. What do you guys? I know we kind of talked about Sesame Street last week, but President Obama came out with a commercial that it seems really hokey.
Well, he is President Obama.
So it was just I so wish I could figure out how to work video on this thing, is that I would really put up the video.
I'm Barack Obama, and I approve this message.
Bernie Madoff, Ken Lay, Dennis Kozlowski, criminals, gluttons of greed, and the evil genius who towered over them. One man has the guts to speak his name.
Big Bird. Big Bird. Big Bird.
It's me, Big Bird.
Big, yellow, a menace to our economy. Mitt Romney knows it's not Wall Street you have to worry about. It's Sesame Street.
I'm going to stop the subsidy to PBS.
Mitt Romney taking on our enemies no matter where they nest.
And, the one point that I thought was interesting is that Jon Stewart actually brought up was the fact that they didn't go after anybody on Wall Street. Yeah.
Well, you think about it, just saying you're going to cancel Big Bird or kill Big Bird, that's showing that Mitt Romney isn't a racist. You know why? Because he's not getting rid of the electric company, which is the more like the ghetto side of like Sesame Street-ish things.
I've never even heard of this.
The electric company?
I've never heard of the electric.
It was like on right after Sesame Street in the afternoons. It was like, it was like good times to all in the family.
Okay.
Like from Sesame Street to electric company. Yeah.
I'm not familiar with that one.
Yeah.
That would be something I have to do some research on. But, yeah, I mean, I thought it was kind of a silly thing. I mean, it was stupid for Romney to have said it, and it's even worse that everybody's latched onto it.
Right.
So, I know Johnny had some interesting thoughts with this.
No, just, the whole thing's kind of interesting. I think it's funny because my wife, thought it was a joke ad and then realized it was real and was shocked. She thought, Jon Stewart was basically running a spoof, and then realized it was real. And just absolutely, shocked her. She really had no idea.
That's funny. I don't know. I'm very saddened to see that the debates have gone the way they have. I'm even more saddened to see that the third parties aren't involved. It was actually kind of funny because my wife, the other day, I was talking about Rocky Anderson from the Justice Party. And she was like, the Justice Party? What's a Justice Party? And I was like, really? And she's like, yeah. She's like, I thought there was just Democrats and Republicans. And I was just like, hon, seriously? There's like probably about 80 different parties right now in the United States.
Well, as far as the debates, they're actually organized by a corporation called the Commission on Presidential Debates.
They're the ones that won't let Gary Johnson go on the presidential debates, even though he's represented in pretty much every state.
Yeah, it was formed in 1987 by the Republican and Democrats, and they actually it's a nonprofit, but they accept sponsorships through private foundations and corporations, and they're the ones who determine the structure of the debates and who participates in them. The thing is, it's made of Republican and Democratic interests designed specifically to shut out third parties, and they're the ones that get the everything together with the networks and everything that organize everything.
What did you say the name of that thing was?
The Commission on Presidential Debates.
I think if you're on the ballot in like more than 40 states, there's no reason at all that you shouldn't be able to,
Well, see, these are things that people don't know, and then like a lot of people are questioning, like, why is there only Democrats and Republicans? There's more people working, and nobody understands why the third party's not there. Like, this information needs to be reported on. People should be out on the streets demanding otherwise. So.
Well, it comes down to two. Like, I mean, if you look, like, every state's different on what you have to do to get in the ballot, and I think one of the states that Gary Johnson's not on the ballot, it's because at some point, I think in that state, he was on the primary for the presidential. He was on the ran for primary for Republican Party.
Right.
So they won't let him run for president as a libertarian.
I just came across the Commission on Presidential Debates site, and I scrolled down and I found their mission statement. It says, our mission, the Commission on Presidential Debates, was established in 1987 to ensure that debates, as a permanent part of every general election, provide the best possible information to viewers and listeners. Its primary purpose is to sponsor and produce debates for the United States presidential and vice presidential candidates and to undertake research and educational activities relating to the debates. The organization was its non-profit, non-partisan 501 corporation, sponsored all the presidential debates in 88, 92, 96, 2000, 2004, and 2008. What I think is interesting is the best possible information to the viewers. If they wanted the best possible information for the viewers, all the presidential candidates would be there.
Right. Well, what's funny is
this is where the guise of information comes from.
Well, it's information warfare, basically. So you control the information, you control the results. Pretty much is the way this is working out. I mean, that comes from either, you have more money than the other guy, so you can put more, and let me tell you about the money. I mean, I just heard it's like, Obama made $100 billion this month in campaign contributions or something like that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that is a shitload of money. Okay? It's not being spent in any of the, the only industry it's going to is television and the advertising. Hopefully. I mean, like that's a lot of money it's being taken out of the economy. That's 1 month, for one candidate. I mean, think about that over a period of time. I mean, that's we're talking a lot of money,
Right.
So, all right, at the bottom of the thing on the commission, it said on September 21st, 2012, Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson filed an antitrust lawsuit against the CPD and the RNC and DNC in D.C. Circuit Court, citing the Sherman Act and claiming that restraint of trade for denying competition to, for example, potential to receive the $400,000 annual presidential salary. Although the complaint recounts the history of CPD formation, it omits any mention of either the Nader-Hegland 2000 lawsuit or the FEC. The Johnson complaint asks for injunctive relief by temporary restraining order by enjoining defendants from conducting presidential debates until all constitutionally eligible candidates are included, whose names will appear in the ballots in states whose cumulative total of electoral college votes is 270 or more. Basically, he's saying if he has a chance to, he's on the ballot and has a chance to at least get the required number of electoral votes, there's no reason he shouldn't be able to be in the debate.
And I agree.
Apparently that lawsuit's been either put on hold or it's just not, they're just not doing anything with it after this election cycle because obviously if there was an injunction against the CPD for conducting presidential debates, we wouldn't be talking about presidential debates that just occurred.
Right.
Right, obviously, but it's interesting to I mean, it's just ridiculous that somebody that's on. I think he's missing like 3 states. He's on the ballot.
I think Jill Stein's the same scenario. She's on a lot of them. She's the presidential nominee for the Green Party.
I know in Maryland, Libertarian, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, and Green are the only ones on the ballot. But in Maryland, the problem is that to get another party on the ballot, you need 10,000 signatures, which, of course, the Democrats and Republicans pick through and try to, say is invalid. I don't know how you invalidate a signature unless somebody signs Mickey Mouse.
Right.
But I mean, you can't read my signature, but it's still my signature.
Well, you're supposed to like print your name and address and phone number and then your signature. Yeah, that's usually the way that goes when people are doing petitions like that. That way you can confirm it somehow that you signed it.
Yeah, see, Jill Stein's on Hawaii, D.C., Alaska. I mean, she's on a ton of them. I mean, she's on a ton of them. The only one she's not in where it's a write-in, it'd be easier to name those. Like, she's not on Montana. She's not on Colorado. She's not on South Dakota. She's not on Kansas, Missouri, Indiana, Georgia, North Carolina. What is that? New Hampshire? No, not Hampshire. No, it's either New Hampshire or Vermont, and then Connecticut. And that's she's either a write-in or seeking litigating. So she's on every other one. So why should she? I mean, just as much as Gary Johnson, I think they all should be involved in it. But I mean, it's just. I mean, I know we keep talking about Gary Johnson because you guys are fucking libertarians.
Well, you talk about conspiracy theories. This is a conspiracy to keep alternate electorate, or candidates off of the ballots by the two-party system, which in this case is represented by the CPD.
Okay. That's all it takes.
They deny information. It's like free advertising for the Republicans and Democrats, but because their candidate's always right in these debates, but to have a third party would actually make them think about their responses, I guess, and make it work harder for them and would take away from their fame. So hence they're denied entry into these affairs, which is critical for national policy. Because we're deciding the future of our country, and these people are actively working to deny information for us to make the most informed choice. That is the essence of conspiracy.
Yeah, well, I happen to be watching.
Take that, Johnny.
I'm sorry, were you still talking?
No, what I think is interesting is the fact that that it's been left out like that. It just doesn't make sense to me.
It makes perfect sense if you consider that they're even though the Nader ruling said that they couldn't prove that the CPT was controlled by the Republican or Democratic Party.
Well, it's non-partisan or bipartisan.
Well, it's controlled by both, and that's the issue.
Mm-hmm. And they want to shut out anything that could possibly take us.
Because the only time they're going to work together is to help the two of themselves out.
Exactly, and I tell you what, a lot of the Republican vote would fall to the Libertarian Party, and a lot of the
Democrats will fall to the Green.
Exactly, and then you have all your little ones like Justice and all that stuff in the middle.
They have a pirate one here.
A pirate party?
They have a pirate party here.
Okay. See,
it's cyber pirates essentially. Yeah, it deals with cyber stuff. So
you see, that's a niche party,
right?
Yeah, libertarians more. I
want niche parties. I want well, at least on the local level, I want niche parties. I want 15, 20 different fucking parties, and I want a runoff presidential election. I want 30 fucking people running for office. And when you come down to after everybody votes, then you run off the top three. And I think France does it that way, where like if you don't have the primary, you have an election. And then the top three people that are left over, everybody gets to revote for one of those three.
I want to see them. I want to see the candidates be quizzed on historical things, and like for instance, all these presidential debates watching, they have like the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution in the background on the wall. If they could, if they were asked, could you recite the thing that's on the wall back there without turning around? I would probably vote for the person who got the right answer.
Can you tell me what Article 15 is of the Constitution?
Article 15?
No, I'm joking for a presidential question to be quizzed on.
Oh, yeah.
Like questions like that,
exactly.
Can you tell me what the 12th Amendment is? You know. So I mean stuff like that. Yeah, I mean I agree with you. I mean I think they're important. I think I think the present day stuff is important, but also knowing all that stuff is important as well. I mean, knowing the history of this country, what it was based on. Like, I don't think we would be so big as to label people terrorists if we actually paid attention to what our past was.
Well, that's what the problem is. Like, we've lost our historical context.
Right.
I mean, and the maxim, the mantra, I guess you could say, is true. Where those who fail to study history are doomed to repeat it.
Right.
Well, we're getting to that point. I mean. I joke about the Brown Church coming, but you know what? We've already got police, special tactics squads busting down people's houses and throwing grenades at little girls, and that they suspect being a meth lab. Why they throw explosives in the window of what they think is a meth lab, I don't know. But
well, that and that other story. Did you see the other story that I had put up about the activist up in Oregon or Washington State?
That's being strong-armed, and basically they're imprisoning her for 18 months
because she won't talk about people that were in part of a activist group with her.
Yeah, they're basically doing it as part of a loophole, and they did the same thing. It's a loophole with the grand jury,
right?
And they did the same thing with one of the journalists, I think from the Washington Times or New York Times, that had a source, a whistleblower source in the NSA about the domestic spying and all that. Mm-hmm. And they actually jailed this reporter because they refused to give up the source, which is supposed to be protected,
right?
And under the First Amendment. And it's basically they're short-circuiting due process this way, but through a technicality in the legal system. And that's the kind of people we have running our government right now. It's the people who can gain the system gain the most from the system.
I also did want to talk about something. I want to change gears here for a minute because I want to talk about something. There is we hear all the time. We talk about entitlements and the entitlement society,
mm-hmm.
and dependency on government. And we hear those terms thrown around a lot. I want to make a couple points here because I was thinking about this. This was when I was watching the presidential debate. I think I was listening to some of these statements, and I kind of thinking about something. When they talk about the entitlement society, like I don't. When I see it, I don't think of the people who are like, oh yes, I need handouts. Give me handouts. I can't survive without my handouts type of thing. Those kind of entitlement things. Like I think of entitlement as the people like that who game the system.
You mean the welfare queens?
Yes, as you would call them. Like I see that more as the people who have gamed the system or hide behind it. Like people who walk out in front of cars crossing the street because they know if they get hit by the car, they can sue the driver. Like those, I feel, are the entitlement society. Or when you hold the door open for somebody and they don't say thank you. That is the entitlement society because they don't feel they feel you're beneath them, so they're entitled to you holding the door open for them.
Or people who pull out in front of you and then just give you a half scoffing wave in the hand, like whatever.
Right. Exactly.
And you want to kill them.
Right. Those are the people that I feel are the entitlement society. And I don't think a single mother with a child that needs to be fed is entitlement society. Then on to the point of dependency on government. My thought was, I was sitting there watching this, and I was thinking about, dependency on government, and I was thinking, dependency on government is caused by low stagnant wages and lack of a living wage. Because if people could earn enough, they wouldn't need to depend on the government. They would be able to...
If they choose to.
No, because you think about it, if you could bring people's wages up to where they wouldn't have to... Except because the problem is that people need to eat, so they give food stamps, or they need to go see a doctor, and they get medical assistance. Okay, so because they're not making enough money at their job, they can't afford either that or their employer doesn't offer things, like insurance. And you think about it, if you could bring if you could pay more people, more citizens, more money, would bring down dependency on government because people could afford to live. And then on top of that, if you could pay them more, they would, I mean, that's how the middle class was built, was the middle class being a consumer class, and we would spend. And we had the money to spend and live. Well, now we do not have that, whether it be caused by hyperinflation or stagnant wages or a bad policy, or whatever of those trifecta that could be causing the problem. The situation is very clear. If our people were making the money, they wouldn't have to depend on it. And if they were making the money and they're still depending on it, they're doing something wrong in their own lives. And the problem is that as a single person right now, with no children, working on minimum wage, you cannot live on your own. And that is a problem.
Well, yeah, it is a problem. There's those in the government circles and in the bureaucracy that feel that that being dependent on the government and will give those gives them a degree of power over people. It's like an ego thing, but it's like writ large and collective, where we can control these people's lives. It's just no different than what Bloomberg's doing right now with all his wacky regulations. And, it's like we want control over your lives because you obviously can't handle it yourself. And by forcing people into these programs, by hook or crook, that gives them that control, because they have to come. I mean, these people have to come to those in control for their basically their survival. And some people get off on that, and and plus it further justifies increased taxation and basically the throughput of money through that department, which makes the department look, which means they get better budgets, and which is the whole thing of the whole system there. And that's a corrupting influence, obviously. And it happens. It's proven to happen. And a lot of people say, well, that's what Democrats' basic modus operandi. Well, that's true to an extent, but the Republicans do it just as much. Even though it's usually the Republicans that whine about it.
The Republicans just don't want to raise taxes, which is silly in and of itself.
Well, you can only raise taxes so much before it starts to have a real effect.
No, because you have to look. Okay, the whole idea of raising taxes, people that argue against that, it just baffles my mind. If you look at the tax rates of the upper class between the 1930s and the 1970s, they were pushing some points 90% in taxes. Mm-hmm. And we had a thriving middle class because
the 90% tax rate?
And not on the middle class.
They're taking away they're taking away 9 out of every $10.
Listen to me.
These people take.
Yes, they were. Okay, but what they were doing, listen, the way it works, and me and Johnny have had this conversation before, where when you put a high tax rate on a company or a CEO for their income tax or whatever the case may be, they then, in order to get a lower tax, they reinvest their money back in because it's just being taxed as take-home profit. So if they reinvest it back in the country, whether it be paying their employees more, establishing better working conditions, hiring more people, their taxes come down. So that's why we had a thriving middle class, because the companies were reinvesting back into themselves because they didn't want to get taxed at a higher rate. So they were taking the money and spreading it out more so the tax rate wouldn't hit them.
That's like putting a punitive damage onto somebody before they've committed a crime or even been convicted.
No, because that's what happened after the 1920s and the Great Depression, was they had to find a way to get these companies to not hoard all the money like they are now, not bother to invest it into jobs and infrastructure and workers that the middle class is falling on, which is what happened in the 20s. And then after they recovered, that's why they bumped the rates up so high. It wasn't because of spending or having to spend. It was because of the fact of, that's when we started putting all these social programs into place, which is important in our country too, which is trying to make sure that the homeless people get medical attention, kids are getting their dinner or, school lunches and being able to invest in all this stuff. So, you think about, what we were able to do over that time frame. Now, you just think about what the average American family was between the 30s and the 70s. Okay, you were able to have one parent work, one parent stay at home. People could own a house and 2 cars on one spouse's pay. Okay? So you think about what that was as compared to when the 80s hit. And we started off-shipping jobs, shutting down plants,
But you know why that happened, though?
The age of capitalism and the Reagan Republicans. They were all about the banks and profit.
Because inflation went through the roof, and the actual things you could buy, like raw commodities that you could buy with a single dollar, went through the floor. And that's why everything went elsewhere, invested in other capital, and that's why you can't buy a full-size car for $3,000 anymore, because of inflation.
And that's
caused by having too much money in the money supply.
Plus, we're not being held to the gold standard anymore.
Well, not only that, it's also that there's the Fed, which is, by the way, not a government agency, it's a private entity of banks, basically increases the money supply on demand from the government because they could make their interest payments on all the bonds they've issued on the Treasury notes.
Well, it also doesn't help that we've borrowed so much money that we can't pay it back, so
that's
we're printing
what that
it.
Is.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right. So we're printing it to pay off our debt, but we got so much money out in the world that's causing a devalue of it.
Yes, and there's historical precedence for this. In Hungary, back in the 1940s, that basically the monetary unit there overnight went to being worthless. And it kept getting worse and worse and worse until they just said, okay, we're dumping this currency because it's completely toxic. And that's called hyperinflation, and it can occur in our system. But people deny that because they say, "Oh, it's too big to fail. It's the United States." Blah, blah, blah.
I'm not denying any of that. That's one of the 3-pronged things I was talking about. But if there's one thing that the government should be paying attention to, beyond all this other dribble that we've talked about with the vice presidential debates and Sesame Street and all the different jazz.
They need to talk about NADA.
Okay, I'm looking at the fact of we need to make it to where our citizens can live. And that's one thing that nobody ever thinks about or talks about, because it's pretty much a I got mine mentality. Okay, but you think about a single person attempting to try to live on minimum wage. Think about an 18-year-old just out of high school, goes and gets his first job, whether it be retail, fast food, wherever that pays minimum wage. He can't survive on that.
Not himself.
Right, well that's my point. To be a sufficient individual, self-sufficient individual, you need to make the money to where you can make it and live and own, not own necessarily, but to be able to have an apartment, to be able to afford an apartment, afford your bills, afford a vehicle of some sort for transportation. These are being able to, be able to get food and other commodities, gas and electric, telephone.
Well, if you're working minimum wage, you should be working at McDonald's. You should be able to get free food, or at least discounted food.
Oh, Jesus. Because we've seen how well that works for people eating that all the time. But, yeah.
Yeah, it's scary when one of the problems our poor people have in this country is obesity.
Right, exactly. But you think about, it's just the fact of that aspect in and of itself. There's a ton of other things that affect that aspect, and I don't disagree with you. Inflation is a huge problem. Taxation is another problem. And lack of legislation is another problem. And whether it be regulation, deregulation, whichever it would take to make that move forward. But I mean, the heart of the problem is the fact that we have people who can't make it now, even if they have a job, which is what pisses me off whenever anybody talks about the entitlement society. Because I got a job. It's not a great job, but it's a job, and I'm working. I'm doing more than the so-called welfare queens that everybody bitches about is doing. But I'm considered part of this entitlement society because I need food stamps, because I need rental assistance, because I need medical assistance. Okay? So to me, it's like, okay, dude, I'm working. I'm doing what I can. I found a job that I could in the economy the way it is. And you're going to bitch because I need help? You know, I mean, it's just like somebody saying, hey, I just wrecked my car, and you go, oh, well, your problem. Have fun. Drive a tow truck.
In a way, it becomes a circular argument, though, because, I mean, I don't disagree with you at all there either. But because it gets to the point where you're saying, okay, the government should help these people because they can't afford to make a living. Well, I'm not listening to what I'm saying.
I'm saying they shouldn't. That's the thing, is if we brought the wages up, we wouldn't have to. Right now,
well, I'm not done yet.
And they're bitching about entitlements. You know,
I understand that, but what I'm saying is that it's within the realm of probability here that the very nature of the government being overburdened or overburdening the population to pay for some of these things is one of the things that's leading to the very thing that's making people poor or unable to make a living wage, simply because just the way unnecessary styming regulation. I'm not talking about necessary regulation. I'm talking about stupid things that don't really need to apply to everybody all the time. But making it so that to have a small business, you need to jump through so many loopholes and devote so much time and money because they to just conforming with reporting requirements because some big corporation decided to build some big CEO decided to build a golf course instead of giving his people their retirement fund or whatever.
Exactly.
But you end up punishing people, which is what a lot of excise taxes were originally made to punish in a way, to defer behavior. This is why we have taxes on cigarettes and alcohol. They're way out of proportion with any other type of substance.
And what they're trying to do with those is trying to remove people's addiction from them by saying, hey, I can't afford these anymore.
Well, but the thing is that's called
it's not necessarily a punishment.
That's called an excise tax. The thing is, the government has taken that excise taxing power and applied it to almost everything we touch in the world today. Where somebody buying a Chevy Neon is assessed a luxury tax because it's a luxury item. I mean, come on, or not a Chevy, a Dodge Neon.
Whichever.
Yeah. I mean, it's become stifling to not only the individual but also the corporations, who then take their money elsewhere because they can actually do better business elsewhere instead of having to be sweating under these regulations that basically prohibit business in some circumstances and affect what they care about, the bottom line, and their shareholders' interests. And that basically takes more money out of the money supply, which then feeds it back into, well, people don't have enough money to live. It's a circular cycle. It's a downward spiral, and we've been doing it for over 50 years now. And it's you gotta there's a point where you just gotta say, okay, hold on, let's catch a breath here and think about this. And that's where I disagree a lot with the Democratic, the policies of the Democratic Party, is because they just want to take more, and there's a point where you can only get so much blood out of the stuff.
But you got to think about this, though. Okay, so it's either the Democrats take, and try to help people that need help because whatever the policy problem is, or you have the Republicans who want to give you nothing and not fix the problem.
Yeah.
So that's where the problem is with those two parties right there.
Noting my problem with the Democrats is because they want to tax to the point where they can fill their coffers to make their paper tiger. Mm-hmm. Okay, but they don't necessarily live in the reality of the business environment or the reality of the working class, as it were.
Right.
Because they're just as detached as the Republicans are as far as making their policy decisions. Because they've been in an office cubicle in Washington D.C. and are trapped in that system just as much as Republicans are.
It just feels weird to me that like these people come up through our system and they have to see that people can't live on minimum wage. And they have to see it. And that's what gets me about the scenario. And if you look at any graph.
All right, so I get what you're saying, but my question, I guess, is, what do you do about it? I mean, if you just decide to raise minimum wage $3, businesses are going to stop hiring, or they're going to let people go that they really feel like they don't need because of the increased wages. I mean, what are you going to do to fix the issue? I mean, I don't disagree with your logic. I just don't know how you actively do it.
Well, it wouldn't jump like it has to start out with the fact of raising taxes on corporations to get them to reinvest and pay and hopefully voluntarily.
Where are they going to get the money if you raise taxes on them, though?
Because they reinvest.
Right. No, he's not saying raise taxes. We were talking about this earlier. It's the basic idea is that, and it's what they've done before, which is why it's, not that hard of, not that odd of a concept, but basically you give them a tax break on the money if they're willing to reinvest it into their company.
Right.
Instead of just straight up giving them a tax break. Instead of just cutting their taxes like the Republicans want to do, you say, okay, you can either pay this rate, or if you want to reinvest in your company, we won't tax you on that part.
All right. Or we'll tax you at a quarter of it.
Right, and that's what gets them to hire, because if you say, look, if you just hold on to the money and you hold on to it and you just to have money, then we're going to tax the shit out of it. If you reinvest it, then we'll leave it alone.
Right.
And that
promotes people to hire and give raises and invest in companies, and that's the point I was trying to make.
I understand.
And then beyond that, even if they don't, you can say, okay, well, you know what? We also have to get deflation down and under control. So that would be another step in that scenario. Because if you have hyperinflation, if you raise people's pay $5, everything else is going to go up $5. And it's just going to keep the gap there. We got to bring the inflation down.
The way it's been going, you raise people's pay $5, everything goes up $20. I mean,
well, right, exactly, and that's my point. It hasn't been even, and so that's another thing you have to take care of. And then if by chance those two things don't decide to bring up the amount of money people are making to a livable wage, but I also want to talk about, me and Johnny were talking about this earlier as well, that each state and maybe even down to each county should have an assessment as to what that baseline is. And the baseline should be a single individual with no children, no spouse, to be able to afford a one-bedroom apartment and whatever else the state would deem as a necessity type of scenario, to be able to, that being the minimum wage of what that pay is going to be in that county. Or the state.
That's a plausible thing to do, but it's just the more you increase, it's almost always the law of unintended consequences when it comes to government interference with business.
Dude, I hate hearing this argument from you, because if it were up to the companies, they would pay us a fucking nickel. Okay, dude, the government has to be involved in this scenario. We've already seen this happen. We see it happening now in India and China. Okay, if a company is left to run it its own amok, it's going to do whatever the fuck it pleases. The government has to step in, which is why they stepped in during the union fights and all the other shit that happened. No, you can't make that argument that government can't interfere in this aspect.
I didn't say that they could interfere. I said the overreaching interference.
You said that they can't interfere. They got to stop interfering in this stuff.
No, I did not say that. I said every time they do interfere.
Do I have to rewind the tape and play it back for you?
Yeah, every time they interfere, there's unintended consequences to it.
Right.
Okay, and there's only so much overhead.
Well, sometimes you have to get unintended consequences to get the intended consequences.
Right.
Well, you can't break an omelet, or you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs.
You gotta find a balance with it. The only problem with having separate areas have separate minimum wage is that, somebody's gonna work in DC where minimum wage would have to be higher and then live somewhere where it's cheaper. I mean,
yeah, but that would come with their commute.
I don't know how you have anybody in New York City that actually makes minimum wage.
Right.
I don't even get how that works, because how do they afford to live anywhere near there? And I can't imagine traveling for a minimum wage job.
Right.
But,
Well, see, my point with that argument is like you said in D.C., somebody lives up here and works in D.C. and has to drive down there to make whatever money, and they're paid the rate that it would be working D.C. Think about that money, being their compensation for the fact that they are traveling. Like it would be like their gas money type of thing, So, I mean, it kind of works out in that scenario, because if you're working at a place where the living wage is higher, and you're traveling to it.
See, that could work out. Then you just raise gas tax like to $3 or $4 higher than what it is now, and everybody will actually live closer to where they work, and it might actually fix part of the environmental issues.
Well, that's what they tried. They were talking about doing. But the thing is, it's just, I don't know. It boggles me.
The government has to get involved here at some point, because the companies obviously have no conscience. At least the majority of them do not have a conscience.
Yeah, but then they're applying this to the small businesses too.
And I agree with you that it shouldn't necessarily hit the small businesses, and I think that
shouldn't at all.
Okay, no, because there should be a same kind of incentive, but maybe not as high as a rate. You see what I'm saying? Where they should still tax the small business owner if he wants to take home more money as opposed to hire more people.
Yeah, but then you get more of this all moving jobs overseas. I mean,
you have to go after them for that too.
Would you want to do business in a country that would pay $9 out of every 10?
If they want to work on our market, they're going to have to. I mean, that's what it boils down to. That's
not how you entice businesses to start.
I'm not worried about enticing businesses, because you know why? Because other businesses are going to find
that's where the revenue's coming from.
No, listen to me. Okay, you got to understand something. They want to do business here. They wouldn't be paying millions of dollars to politicians for lobbyists if they didn't want to operate here. The problem is we're making it easy for them to operate here.
That's the point.
No, it's not the point. Okay.
Listen, hold on. Bank of America charges $5 in most places for somebody to use their a machine, an ATM, for 30 seconds. They charge $5 for somebody for 5 seconds. For $5 you get 30 seconds on a machine, and yet they pay their tellers $8 to $10 an hour.
Right.
I mean, that's what gets me, is when they just rape us in fees. So the banks irritate the shit out of me, and I get what you're saying about the small businesses, because my dad had a small business, and honestly, when he could afford to hire people, he would hire people. And, at this point he's shutting his doors, and it's just not worth it to him anymore. And he's diehard Tea Party, and on the business end, I kind of get where he's coming from with what he's had to deal with. But you do have to make it different for big business and little business. But, let's be honest, places like Bank of America, they are raping the American public. And, in part we're letting them get away with it because we continue to use them. And I'm guilty of it too. I have one of their credit cards, and for God's sakes, if I could pay it off and get rid of it, I would, but I can't afford to.
I'm not talking about a service institution like a bank. I'm talking about like manufacturing jobs. Okay?
And there are ways to work around that, but the thing is that we also can't. The problem is that we have systems in place right now that encourage people to move their jobs overseas.
And let's be honest, the
and if
manufacturing
you put
really
a
doesn't
90%
account for that
tax
much
rate
of the
up,
US
that'll do
economy.
that.
If we put a 90% tax thing on there, they wouldn't be taking all that money and being able to ship it overseas. They'd be reinvesting it in their company.
No, they wouldn't do business here to begin with.
Then fuck them. They can go work in China and not sit underneath our fucking legal system, and they can go deal with the dictators and the half, not having fucking power for 36 days out of a year or whatever it is over in India, where they have fucking rolling blackouts. They can go deal with that shit. We got a fucking amazing infrastructure, an amazing amount of freedom, free speech, capitalism. We have a ton of fucking wonderful things here. And what they want to do is they want to manipulate the system in their favor and then bitch because it isn't. Okay? They chose to open a business here. They chose to work with the American people under the original rules. And they have done nothing but pay to degrade every single bit of that. Whether it be free speech, taxes, whatever the aspect is, these businesses have done nothing but try to degrade them. Union bashing, the whole nine. Okay? They have attempted, they built this country. If they don't like the way our tax system is and the rest of our shit, they can go to these other countries, they can go sit in China, they can deal with their fucking regime and their communism, and then they can worry about that shit. Okay? But they're here under our rules. And as long as there are Americans here, there will be businesses here. No matter what the stipulations we put in place are for them. And they've existed before this, and all these regulations, they'll exist after it.
Well, we'll find out about that because France just put in a 75% tax rate on people making a lot of money.
Good.
We'll see how France does.
Dude, we did it for 50 years. It made us one of the strongest countries in the world. Okay? It is not going to fucking hurt. People want to make money. They're going to open businesses. People are going to do it here. You think the mom and pop stores don't blow up to be an amazing thing? And it's because during that 50-year stint, we were fucking pumping money into the economy like crazy. We had workers that were able to go and fucking buy products. Okay, so that means you had people being able to go out and make products. You had people that were able to invent things and make a mint off of it. Okay? Like I said, if they want to go to China because they're going to cry because they're getting taxed a little bit harder, they can go over there and they can deal with the communist China people. Okay? They can deal with not having freedom of speech. They can deal with being under a nationalist, group. Okay? We don't have that here. They have a wonderful advantage being in the United States. And the problem is, this goes to the entitlement thing of, oh, well, you know what? I don't like it your way. So I'm going to do everything I can to fuck with your shit and fuck everybody else so I can get mine.
But that's exactly what you're advocating.
No, it's not. I'm saying that as a society, we turn around and say we're going to be this amazing society. We have talked about this through president after president after president. And we want to make the middle class awesome. And we want America to be number one. The problem is we're not, and it's all a bullshit scheme. And it's because of people privatizing shit that should be state-ran and state-running shit that should be privatized. And then turning around and allowing companies to manipulate every fucking aspect of our government. Because our government's saying, oh, like you are, what if they go to another country? What will we ever do? Well, it's a ridiculous thought process. The businesses do not.
It's your source of revenue, though.
And like I said, there will always be business. There will always, even if it's a fucking fruit cart guy on the side of the goddamn road, there will always be business to be taxed. Because it has to happen in the capitalist society. But the problem is we're making it easy for the CEOs and the shareholders to fucking take our money and shovel it out the goddamn door, as opposed to trying to reinvest into the infrastructure, into the worker, into the roads, schools, highways. We're allowing them to walk away from all of that, like people like Sheldon Adelson turned around and said, I want to send my money to where I want to send it to. So he's making the decision that he's going to turn around, he's just going to pump his money into whatever fucking cause he feels like it, as opposed to trying to reinvest into the American system and every citizen that's in this country.
So you would feel comfortable with somebody coming up to you and saying, this is where you have to spend your money. This is how you have to
That's
spend
the way
your money.
this government has worked for the past 200 fucking years. Okay? This last fucking 40
if they're not, and we're not saying that this is where you have to spend your money. We're saying if you don't want to fucking pay the taxes on it, you want to reinvest it, we encourage it.
It's the same thing.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's
They
not.
have the
Yes, it
choice.
is.
No.
Yeah,
And
they
you know
have
what?
the choice of suffering or do what you say. That's called blackmail.
If they want to take home more money to have a Ferrari, if they
racketeering.
If they want to take home more money to have a Ferrari, we should tax the fuck out of them because it doesn't really serve a purpose. Okay, it's just them doing their fucking luxury tax going and fucking off. If they're going to give them a tax cut to reinvest and give jobs to Americans, to make things in America, to open plants in America, to help reinvest fucking into cars and adopting highways and education systems around their plants, which they have done before under those types of scenarios, that's what we should be promoting. This whole bullshit of, oh, we can't let them go and do this because we might lose businesses, or, oh, we can't tell them how to spend their money. Dude, it's America's money. It's all of our money. We print them. We pay the taxes. Our taxes go back into everything, come back out, get repaid to the millionaires, come back out, hit the workers buy shit that goes to the CEOs go to the government, blah, 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 blah. And it's a big fucking washing machine. It's a big cycle. It all goes back and forth, back through it. All of us have it. The problem is that we have this one section that's going to go, oh yeah, well, you know what? I'm going to put the stopper right here, and whatever money goes on that side of the stopper is mine. And that's the end of it. And then they're going to fight to make sure they don't have to pay any taxes. They don't have to do anything. They can go do whatever the fuck they want with this money. It all disappears from the government, which means there's less in the cycle that's for the rest of us. And I'm not saying that we should redistribute wealth, but I think that if we're going to encourage business, we have to do it in a real, legitimate way. Turning around and saying, oh, well, we got to cut their taxes or else they'll run away. They're already shipping jobs overseas now, and we've cut the shit out of their taxes. They got a 20% tax rate on some of their shit. Okay, dude, they're still shipping jobs overseas. They weren't shipping them overseas when they were at 90%. So what the fuck are you trying to tell me? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense to take such a lot more of the profit. It's like you're saying that money doesn't belong to the people that earn it.
It doesn't.
Okay.
Look at what it says. Property of the
So
Federal
your
Reserve.
money that you make at your job isn't yours, and you have no right to it.
I don't ever see my money. It's all ones and zeros goes into my bank. I never see a fucking actual bill. But anyway, my point is not that. My point is that we need to structure our society back to the way it was when we would turn around and say, okay, you know what? If you want to take home $1 billion of profits, we're going to tax you at this rate. If you were willing to reinvest it and hire people, we will tax you at a quarter of that. So they go, oh, well, you know what? It's essentially a tax break for me if I hire more people, if I reinvest in my company, if I raise my workers' wages. Not, hey, if you keep all that money, you can do whatever you want with it. So let's go buy politicians in China. Let's go buy stock in another company so that we can ruin them. You know, it's this mentality that is destroying this country. The fact that we put business above all else. Business is not above all else. It needs to have a conscience. It needs to have a moral center. It has no loyalty to the United States. These are multinational corporations, as we've seen with Shell and Exxon and Dole and a ton of other companies that could give two shits when they've walked out of our country and go deal in another country. They don't care that they're a U.S.-based state and that it looks bad on us. They don't care. Why should we give a shit if they go and move their company to another fucking place? Another entrepreneur, because this country is full of them, will build a business, bring it up, and you know what? They might fucking leave too. But you know what? They started here. They built it here. And if they want to move it, it's their fucking choice. But the people that don't realize is that we have a great fucking country here. We have a great system here. Yes, it may have some fucking problems, but we do. And if people don't like it and these motherfuckers want to bitch about the fact that they're getting taxed too high, be my guest. There's the door. We will find a way. We survived before you. We will survive without you. It's just that simple. Okay, the problem is that the money needs to be reinvested in this country. It needs to. It needs to happen. We're not going to get out of debt otherwise. And you can't raise the taxes on the middle class because they're already taxed to the point of almost fucking being gone. But yeah,
where is that money going?
Into the CEO's pockets. If you ever looked at a graph of where wages are compared to CEOs,
I'm not talking about the wages. I'm talking about the taxes.
Taxes have gone into taking care of all these people, whether it be food stamps, stuff. Not only that, but paying for wars that we have no need for.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
That's where our money's going. the little bit of money that is going into the tax pot is being diverted into all this other shit, which going into the wars is being diverted back into the CEO.
But that is a political decision that's run by the government,
and
they misuse those funds. And every time you bring politics into something, it fucks everything up because
that's not true.
It becomes a pissing contest between two fucking punks.
It is because that we believe that business is above all else in this country right now. And we did not believe that before. Companies needed a moral center. They were afraid, well, maybe not afraid, but concerned with what their customers thought of them.
I want to know what happened to like Henry Ford, who paid his workers well because he wanted his workers to be able to afford to buy the cars they were making,
right.
Or Eastman Kodak, who basically, designed the pension systems, and the guy, he went to like Ivy League schools to find the best accountant he could, or the best economist he could, to sit down and figure out how to do basically a pension program. And they ended up using the guy that he hired and had the guy design his program was the guy that helped design Social Security for the U.S. government.
You know where
these were good. These were good businessmen that were also cared about their employees.
Right. You got to care about the community around your. You got to care about the community around your plant, because those are the people that work there.
But there's more money in not doing it, and that's why.
You know why? Because they're not being taxed.
No, that's not true.
Yes, it is.
Not being.
You're right. There's more money in it, but where does that money go? The money, unfortunately, goes to the CEOs, and it doesn't go to the common man. So what do let's be honest, regardless of the argument you guys are having about it, it comes down to, I don't give a fuck if the company doesn't make more money, if they're not investing it back into the people or back into the business. If some CEO somewhere is making $800 million a year, I don't give a shit if he's only making $400,000 a year now because I took the other half of his money in taxes, because he's still rich as fuck. Right. So I don't really give a shit. If you want to, yeah, I guess I should be worried about equality and stuff, but you know what? I really don't give a fuck. Because honestly, he doesn't work that much harder than I do, and
he works less harder. What are you talking about?
I'm not going to say being a CEO of a company is not a hard job. It is.
I will.
But to run a company properly, I can't imagine the stress. Look at the president. God, how much has he aged in the last 3.5 years?
That's true.
Running a country. But it's when you're running something that big, there's bound to be stress involved. But when you're talking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, and when you're completely fucking up and still getting bonuses, and when some of those bonuses come from taxpayers and all this other bullshit that goes on, it really comes down to, I don't give a fuck whether I tax them 50% or not, because they're still fucking rich after I tax them 50%. I don't care. I really don't.
You're not talking about taxing the CEO. You're talking about taxing the company.
The company that doesn't reinvest, again, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you're saying you're going to take 90, a colossal number, 90% of profit.
I was pushing the top number that it ever was during those 30 years of prosperity.
Well, even let's say
I'm not to that point, but my thing, and the difference between what Mike's saying and what I'm saying, and he's, like you said, he's going to the top point.
Right.
My point, I don't necessarily think we need to raise taxes on businesses, but I sure as hell don't think we need to lower them. I think instead of lowering taxes on businesses, we need to incentivize, where we'll say you can have the lower taxes, but you got to reinvest in the company, and you have to do it on American soil.
Personally, I think we just need to get rid of all the loopholes that people built into the system through influence on legislatures.
You know what, though? I'm going to say something here sworthy to that, just because of the loophole aspect. Dude, no matter how many loopholes you will ever get rid of, someone will always find new ones. So to me, that is a futile it's a futile process, and it wastes more time.
But if you're saying that democracy is a futile process in this country, because that's what it stemmed from.
No, it doesn't stem from people searching for loopholes.
Yeah, it does. It stems from people paying politicians to their campaign funds.
But that's not
loopholes in the laws. When that is where the origin of the laws are, or the legislation.
Well, that goes down to campaign finance reform.
Right. That goes into a whole different subject, dude.
No. It's still influence It's still influence, and that's how they do the business, though. That's part of the cost of doing business. And if they would just eliminate all those little exemptions and whatnot, we'd actually have revenue to pay for shit.
Well, you mean like the mortgage help exemption and the child care exemption and
I'm talking about exemptions for corporations. Like, oh, well, if you plant a tree on your coal dam out in West Virginia, then we'll give you this huge tax break. A $1 billion tax break. Okay. And it's
and you know what, we're essentially promoting the same thing, except it's not planting a tree. It's saying, hey, reinvest in your company and make some more jobs, and we'll give you a tax cut, as opposed to just going, oh, we're sorry, you're taxed too hard, let me give you a tax cut, because that's what it's boiled down to. And instead of saying, hey, you know what, we want to give you a tax cut, but the only way we can do it in good conscience is if you're hiring people and reinvesting in your company and growing your company in the United States.
And put on the stipulation that it needs to be on American soil.
Right. How can you say that's wrong? I mean, because it needs to happen.
I'm not saying it's laudable. It's a good idea, but I'm just looking at it from the perspective of a person who has a lot of money in their hand that wants to build a business, saying that shit is. I'm not getting involved in that. That's what it said,
Like I said, if they want to invest here and they want to build here, then they'll deal with what we got. I mean, you have to do it in every country. You have to go deal with whatever issues they have going on in their country.
Right, you're acting like somebody that wants to be rich and somebody that wants to be rich and has the money to start a company is just not going to start a company because they don't want to deal with the regulations. Well, if they want to get richer, they have to run a company. So
right,
they're going to do it regardless.
There's a lot of ways to fleece people of their money.
And you're right, and that's my point, is the fact that if they want to do business here, they're going to do business here, what our regulations are or not. I mean, we put the EPA in place and started cracking down on a lot of companies, and guess what? They're still doing business. So, I mean, some of them may have went out over...
And it drives the costs up, too.
And you know what, dude? For a little bit cleaner air and some clean water, I'm okay with
it. I'm talking about the other thing, about the tax incentive thing. You have a finite of money being spent by the consumers. Okay, when you increase the price of something, the consumers buy less. Okay, they spend less money on it, and to it. You get less revenue from the sale through taxation. All right. And that just drives your revenue down. And you're saying, well, why isn't the money pouring in to our government coffers? Well, because you just made a disincentive for people to spend their money. They're in a bad economic place. They see everything going up in cost, much like it is now. And they say, I'd rather hold on to this money until I really need it. And then you have an economic crash like the Great Depression. Okay, and that
came from deregulation and lowering taxes.
Well, it also came from consumer confidence.
Right, because of those two things that I just mentioned.
Okay, that's fine. We want to say that fine. You want to say that I understand. I'm never going to change your mind about this.
Well, I'm talking about history, dude. That's what happened.
That history too.
Yeah, I don't know which history you're talking about, but essentially the Great Depression was caused by huge deregulation and lower taxes on the rich, which is happening right now.
That's not the sole origin of the Great Depression.
And what was the sole origin of the Great Depression?
There is no sole origin. It's a confluence of events.
Okay. But anyway, so the point that I'm making is that if you have a worker who has money in his hand, he will buy shit. When he buys shit, it goes to the owner or the stockholders or whatever the case may be. So that stockholder then has an option, which is either pay more taxes and give it to the government, or pay less taxes or give it back to the worker somehow.
You understand. You know what a capital gains tax is, right?
Yes.
Okay, that's just that they tax the profit you make off of a stock increase. So that's already being taxed.
Okay. Well, it probably needs to go up. So that gives that guy an option to either invest it back in his company or his worker at a lower tax rate. See, the problem is now is that the money going to the government is taxed at a low rate, and the money to go back into the company or the worker is higher because the way our tax code is written. So the companies don't want to invest in their workers or their company because it costs them more money because they're larger. So it's cheaper to pay their taxes to the government, which is what they've lobbied so very hard to do. So they get to walk away with a lot more money, don't have to reinvest in their money because they're not getting any incentive to do so because the taxes are higher to do that. Mm-hmm. And they pay less money to the government because the taxes are lower. So that's where the problem lies. And I'm not saying that, there isn't a million other things that are going on in this scenario, but I'm talking about just in the simplistic aspect of it. And the fact of the government not having money to invest in things, or companies not reinvesting into their communities and shipping jobs overseas stems from that aspect. The fact that it's cheaper to pay their taxes to the government through the capital gains tax than it is to reinvest in their company and their worker. So you have workers that are making less and less, staying on a semi-plateau of getting a 10-cent a year raise when a CEO is walking away with $8 million a year.
Yeah, I agree with that. But how many people work for companies directly like that, though? In terms of your little worker, how many people work for the corporation?
A lot,
directly. Okay, but
think about if you took that guy's. Okay, say this guy walks away with a $20 billion a profit after paying taxes to the government, and that's what he walks away with. Okay, $20 billion. Okay. I'm just throwing out a random number here. Okay, so you think about that. He walks away with that $20 billion. Now you think about, okay, if you cut, say, $10 billion of that and reinvested it back into his workers, think about how much that would be per worker, even if he had 1 million workers. So, I mean, it's just that aspect of...
Yeah, okay.
That's just one aspect of how that can work. I mean, you think about taking that $10 million and reinvesting it, $10 billion back into the company to build new plants and even keep their workers pay at the same rate, to be able to open more plants, to be able to employ more people.
Then they can get taxed further.
Well, then you also have more workers that are able to pay into the company to make you more profit, which then you pay more taxes, of course, but that's how the system works. It's always worked that way. The more money you make, the more taxes you get nailed with.
Yeah, and the more you pay lawyers to avoid those taxes.
And I don't disagree with you, and that's one of the problems with the system.
Well, I think it's just too complex at this point.
And I don't disagree with you on that either.
Where it requires an attorney to understand it first off, and then to tell you how to invest.
Right?
Because there's so many. It's like a foam instead of a. It's like you are paying this much in taxes, and it's not just one level either. That's another issue. You have a value-added tax, you have an excise tax, you have transfer tax, you have tax on the transport costs,
yes.
Tax, and there's so many taxes
right.
that if you add it all together, in order to get object A from point A to the consumer's hands and point B, you're actually over the value of the product itself in taxes.
Oh, I'm sure.
Okay. Now that is unhealthy from an economic viewpoint.
And that is a completely different set of taxes than what I was talking about.
I understand that, but I'm saying there's already money coming to the government from so many levels. Where is this money going?
Well, see, look, me and Johnny have had this discussion before. Like, you look at Maryland. Maryland's a great example for it.
Yeah.
Because we have a gas tax, right? Right? So we have a tax on gas. It's supposed to be for one thing. And that is paying for our roads, keeping up on stuff, paying for MTA.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to be used for those things, but it's not. It's dumped in a general coffer. And then it's used everywhere else.
But by politicians who choose. Well, it's the same thing with Social Security also.
Right.
Social Security was supposed to be a sealed trust, okay? And it's not, because a politician, a legislative politician, the people who actually determine taxes, and where money goes fiscally and everything, has said, okay, well, let's take money from that and use it for something else. And that's a political decision, and half of the political decisions are made just to fuck the other party, okay? Or to benefit their own party, not necessarily the American people. Because
I disagree with that, at least up until the last 30 years, maybe even less. But I think a lot of decisions were made in the interest of the public.
Under the guise, now it's under the guise of they spin it to look like it makes it look like it's for the public, but it's no longer. And it comes to a matter of, okay, these tax dollars are going out. Why am I trusting these people to use these tax dollars appropriately and in a manner that would actually benefit? They're just, it seems like they're just another quarter of money, just like your corporate bigwigs you speak of, where they just take more and more and more and more and more, and that just leaves everybody with less and less and less.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm coming from. How much more can the government take?
Well, see, the thing is that the taxes have gone lopsided, and the reason that we're shifting them so much towards the average person and on the product is because we've shifted them away from the people who are walking away with huge coffers of money.
Well, that's fine, but do you think they're going to do away with those taxes? That hurts.
And that is up to the American people to stand up and say, these things need to change. The American people as a whole need to be in unison about this, and there has been so much division and lack of transparency from the politicians and lack of true information from the politicians and even the news on these aspects that people don't understand what to argue.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm saying. That's why I have so little faith in the whole aggregate, the whole shebang, because it's just spinning wheels one way or another. There's no traction anywhere, and really it makes it worse having either a Democrat or a Republican in the top slot every 4 years or 8 years, because it just becomes about that.
Right.
It's really frustrating to me. It's like, okay, well, where is this progress that the Democrats keep lauding about, and where is this, smaller government that the Republicans keep talking about? Because I haven't seen either from any of them.
Right. And I don't disagree with you.
Because I don't see draconian taxation as a progressive thing. I just don't.
Right. And I don't disagree with you, but I think that if we were able to tax the CEOs more...
Night on that.
What's that?
You disagree with me all night on that.
No, the taxation on the CEOs needs to happen. People who are making a large amount of money, that are walking away with coffers of money, should be taxed higher. And I think if they were taxed higher, the taxes, like the gas tax or the sales tax, or whatever case may be, that actually affect the working class more, would be able to come down more because of that aspect. Now, whether or not the politicians would actually lower that tax is a different story. But what I'm saying is, in my scenario, is if you have income coming from another place, then that should be able to come down.
But it won't.
I'm not disagreeing with that aspect. Okay. I'm speaking in a hypothetical, this is the way the world should be thought process.
Right.
Okay. I'm not talking about how the world is necessarily. I'm saying how it should be.
I'll just say, they haven't. It seems like once they get the hooks in you, they don't let go.
Right.
and while we're getting rid of spending, can we get rid of faith-based initiatives yet?
That would be wonderful.
That would be great, because I don't think our government has any. I don't even like hearing candidates talk about religion, because they end up making it's like, well, if I'm elected, then it's like, well, you shouldn't even be talking about that, because you're applying your morality to everybody, and nobody has the same morality beyond a specific.
That was one of the things I really enjoyed that Biden said in the, said in the debate, was the whole, I'm Catholic, but, I don't think it's right for me to impose.
Yeah,
my religion or others.
he made a very excellent point with that. And I was kind of impressed with it, and you know, and that still doesn't sway me from thinking that he's an idiot.
Well, everybody has a bright spot. Hey, did you guys hear the? I'm looking now. The somebody fired a shot into the Obama Colorado headquarters.
Did they really?
Yeah.
And where at White headquarters?
In Denver, Obama headquarters for Colorado.
I did not hear that yet. I heard a story about a guy who was threatened by his neighbor that he was going to wind up messing him up or killing him or something along those lines just because he had an Obama sign in his yard. And that was in Oklahoma.
They said it looks like one shot was fired into the structure at about 3 p.m. this afternoon.
Yeah, it's probably a stray police bullet. They won't admit to that.
Actually, I was in the cop's house this morning, and he was an Obama supporter, so who knows?
But it's funny that you mentioned the thing about the Obama signs. There were people threatening the people with the Romney signs too last week.
Really, I didn't see that.
They're actually stealing them out of their yards and stuff.
I didn't see
burnt,
that one.
and, like lighting them on fire.
Well, my last election, I went to my my dad's place, and he opens a shed, and he's got like 15 freaking Obama signs in his shed. He said he went and de-Obamified the neighborhood.
Nice.
So he basically like drove through the neighborhood and stole everybody's Obama signs.
That's messed up.
Yeah, it's pretty jacked up.
That's messed up.
It's all right. I've there's a couple times now I've gotten Democrat signs just so I could pull his overnight I'll pull his Republican sign and put a Democrat sign in the place.
That's awesome.
So when I leave that, like, I think I left one day and he had he had an Obama sign. I took one of the signs out of the shed and put it in the front yard. He took his Republican sign.
He probably had like a conniption fit. He's like, "Oh my God!" Ah!
Well, he caught me trying to put an Obama O sticker on the back of his truck. Right next to all his Tea Party stickers. He about had a shit fit.
All right. Well, that's going to be the end of the show. We have gone way, way over our time on this. So, for the Working Class Congress, I'm Mike, it's Johnny, and Esworthy. Good night.
Listen up, man, I'll tell you who I am. Just another stupid American. You don't wanna listen, you don't wanna understand. So finish up a drink and go home. Listen up, man, I'll tell you who